Megadeth was never an easy band to be in. From the start, it was built on intensity, speed, and perfection. Dave Mustaine demanded total commitment, and every member knew the pressure was real. David Ellefson, as the steady backbone of the band, watched Megadeth rise through chaos, lineup changes, and personal battles. By the mid-1990s, the band had already survived many storms, but one of the hardest moments came from inside the drum kit. Nick Menza was not just a drummer, he was family. He had been part of Megadeth's most important years and helped shape their sound. Fans loved him, and the band trusted him. Still, pressure can break even strong bonds. As Megadeth grew bigger, the expectations grew heavier. Tours became longer, recording schedules became tighter. Mistakes were no longer small issues. They were threats to the band's future. Ellefson later recalled that the band was walking a thin line between loyalty and survival. Everyone hoped problems would fix themselves. No one wanted to say the words out loud, but deep down, something felt wrong. The machine that was Megadeth needed everyone running at full speed, and slowly, it became clear that one part of that machine was struggling to keep up. Nick Menza was more than a drummer. He was a driving force. His style was powerful, creative, and unpredictable in the best way. Albums like Rust in Peace showed how important he was to Megadeth's identity. Ellefson often spoke about how Nick's drumming gave the band its sharp edge. On stage, Menza played with energy and confidence, locking in with Ellefson's bass in a way few drummers could. Fans saw him as irreplaceable. Inside the band, that belief was strong too. That's why the situation hurt so much. When someone like Nick begins to struggle, the impact is impossible to hide. At first, the band made excuses. Everyone goes through rough patches. Touring is exhausted. Recording is stressful. But Megadeth wasn't a band that could slow down. The music demanded precision. Even small timing issues could throw everything off. Ellefson later explained that the problem wasn't talent. Nick had plenty of that. The issue was reliability. Megadeth needed someone who could deliver every night without question. As the gap between expectation and reality grew, the tension became harder to ignore. Respect remained, but concern slowly replaced confidence. Nick Menza's health began to play a major role in the situation. Physical pain, fatigue, and personal struggles started affecting his performance. Drumming at Megadeth's level is brutal on the body. Long tours, fast tempos, and intense shows push drummers to their limits. Ellefson recalled seeing warning signs that couldn't be ignored. Missed cues, slower reactions, moments where the band had to adjust on the fly. These were not just technical problems, they were red flags. The band cared about Nick as a person, not just a musician, but caring didn't erase the reality of the stage. Fans expected perfection. Promoters expected consistency. One bad show could damage Megadeth's reputation. Behind the scenes, conversations became serious. The band hoped rest would help. They hoped things would improve naturally, but hope is not a plan. Ellefson later said that the hardest part was watching a friend struggle while knowing the band couldn't afford mistakes. The gap between friendship and professionalism grew wider every night. Eventually, the question was no longer, will this get better? It became, how long can we keep going like this? That question changed everything. Tours reveal the truth about a band. In the studio, mistakes can be fixed. On stage, there is nowhere to hide. During one particular tour, the tension reached a breaking point. Ellefson remembered nights where the band felt nervous before walking on stage. That should never happen in a professional metal band. Confidence is everything. When that confidence disappears, the music suffers. Nick's struggles became more visible. Some shows were solid, others were not. That inconsistency was deadly for a band like Megadeth. Crew members noticed. Management noticed. Fans noticed. Ellefson described a growing silence backstage, where no one wanted to say what everyone was thinking. The energy was different. Instead of excitement, there was worry. Every song felt like a risk. Every fast section felt dangerous. This was the moment when the band realized the problem was no longer temporary. It was structural. Megadeth could not move forward like this. The tour didn't just test their stamina, it tested their loyalty. And loyalty alone was no longer enough. David Ellefson later recalled one specific moment when everything became clear. It wasn't dramatic. There was no shouting. That's what made it worse. During a performance, something went wrong that shouldn't have. The band tried to push through, but the connection was gone. In that moment, Ellefson realized this wasn't about one bad night. It was about the future. He looked around and saw frustration instead of unity. That was the turning point. Ellefson said he knew deep down that Megadeth couldn't continue like this. The realization hit hard because it involved a friend, not just a bandmate. Knowing something and wanting something are very different. He didn't want Nick to leave, but he knew it had to happen. That moment stayed with him for years. It was the point where denial ended and reality took over. From that night on, the question was no longer if Nick would be fired. It was when and how. After that realization, the band faced the hardest conversations of their career. Talking about replacing a drummer like Nick Menza felt wrong. Ellefson described those discussions as heavy and emotional. There were no villains in the room, just people trying to protect something they had built together. Dave Mustaine carried the weight of leadership, but the decision affected everyone. They talked about options, breaks, changes, adjustments, but every path led to the same conclusion. Megadeth needed stability. The band couldn't gamble on shows anymore. Ellefson emphasized that this wasn't about ego or power. It was about survival. These conversations didn't happen once. They happened again and again, each time more painful. Silence often filled the room. Everyone knew what needed to be said, but no one wanted to say it. In the end, honesty won, and honesty hurt. Firing Nick Menza was not a cold business move. It felt like losing a family member. Ellefson later said this was one of the most painful moments in Megadeth's history. Years of shared stages, buses, and memories didn't disappear with one decision. There was sadness, guilt, and regret. At the same time, there was relief. The band finally faced the truth. Ellefson made it clear that the respect for Nick never disappeared. Even after the split, his contributions were never erased. Fans sometimes see lineup changes as drama, but inside the band it felt like mourning. Letting go didn't mean forgetting. It meant accepting that some chapters must end for the story to continue. When news of Nick's departure became public, fans were shocked. Many didn't understand. Some were angry. Nick was beloved, and the reasons were not fully explained at the time. Ellefson understood that reaction. From the outside, it looked cruel. From the inside, it was necessary. The band chose not to share every detail out of respect. That silence created rumors, but it also protected Nick's dignity. Ellefson later said that fans often don't see the daily grind of touring and performing. They see the highlights, not the struggles. The truth was more complex than headlines could explain. After Nick's exit, Megadeth continued. New drummers came in. The sound evolved. Stability returned. Ellefson admitted it took time to heal. The band had to rebuild trust on stage. Slowly, confidence came back. The machine started running smoothly again, but something was missing. The history. Even as Megadeth moved forward, Nick's shadow remained. His influence was still in the music, still in the fans' memories. Moving on didn't erase the past. It simply added a new chapter. Years later, Ellefson spoke about Nick Menza with respect and sadness, not bitterness. Time softened the pain. Reflection brought understanding. He acknowledged that health, pressure, and circumstances all played a role. There was no single cause, just a collision of realities. Ellefson made it clear that he wished things could have ended differently, but he also accepted that the decision saved the band. Sometimes doing the right thing feels wrong in the moment. Only time reveals the full picture. David Ellefson's reflection on Nick Menza's firing is not just a Megadeth story. It's a lesson about life, loyalty, and hard choices. Talent alone is not enough. Health matters, stability matters, and sometimes love means letting go. Ellefson's honesty shows that even legendary bands face impossible decisions. Nick Menza will always be part of Megadeth's legacy, and the moment Ellefson knew he had to go remains one of the most painful truths in the band's history.